let's switch it. I'd offer mine, but I've been in that chair. Yep. Can you get by me? Let me get over here. I don't want to give mine up, so here.
No, I'll take the other one. I just can't figure out how to adjust it. And it's like, there's something on my back that's like, someone must have
Is this
this was way better. Yeah, this was better.
Yeah. It is. Yeah.
There's got to be a limit.
Yeah, sometimes these chairs are so complex.
Alrighty, it is 5:02. Let's get started here on the July 14, 2020 Planning Commission meeting, since we have not met since March, correct? In person. We thank you all for joining us for the Zoom meetings as much as you can. And we do need approval of the minutes for the June 9 and the June 23, 2020 meetings.
Can we do them both at once?
Yes.
Okay, I move that we approve them as written.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Next, communications from the audience. For items that are not listed on the agenda, you can come forward at this time to do that. All right, next, new business. Letter A, 51 East 8th Street, deck.
All right, I'm up for that one,
All right,
and I'll introduce the staff report. Jenna's going to try to coordinate on the slides. But essentially what we have is a site plan approval request for the installation of a deck on the back side of the building that most of us probably know of as Bohr's Bootery or Bohr's Shoes, 51 East 8th Street. The plan is to install a 6-foot by 13-foot deck constructed of steel frame and synthetic deck boards to be located 12 feet off the ground, immediately above the store's loading dock. Jenna's showing you a visual of what the deck would look like. Plans also include adding a door off of the second floor to access the deck. The door will have a substantial glass face, thus adding to the overall window area space of the facade. There were no concerns that arose with regard to the development standards. With regard to the C3 standards, most of the items were not applicable, and those that did apply to this particular development or improvements were found to be in compliance. With respect to comments received from city departments, there were no concerns noted, including from the DDA, which did review the site plan and found it to be acceptable. So all that said, recommendation from staff is for the Planning Commission to approve the site plan as presented in the application. I don't know if
Thanks,
anybody
Mark.
is here for that project that would like to add anything. I don't believe so.
okay. I don't know if I've ever approved a deck as a site plan.
It appears that there's no steps up to it. I mean, it's just
Correct.
accessible from the second floor apartment.
Yep.
Okay.
All right,
And Mark, this is this picture that we've got up here is a picture of a deck, not the deck,
I
I'm
believe
assuming,
that's the
right?
case. I believe it's a replica of what they have in mind
Okay.
from another site.
And if I'm looking at the site plan and the mapping, it looks like it does not project beyond the depth of the buildings on either side of it. So there are two buildings on either side. This one is kind of set back or set forward, depending on
Correct.
how you want to look
Yep.
at it.
And it is within the confines of the parcel itself.
Yep.
Okay.
And you
So
said
they
it's
have a loading
directly,
dock. Sorry,
the
go
loading dock is directly underneath it?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, the photo does not do it any justice.
No, it was kind of hastily put together on the day that they applied, but they
Okay.
really wanted to get in for this particular meeting. But
Mhm.
Their plan does have railings, though, on their deck?
yes,
Okay.
There will be no walking space underneath it, though, or,
Oh, it's 12
because it's
feet
just a
up.
loading dock? All right,
I'll make a motion.
Well,
I
no,
think we have to
gotta
do a
public
open-
hearing.
a public
Open, okay.
hearing on that one, correct?
Yes.
Correct. All right, at this time, I will open a public hearing on this item. Anybody like to speak to this? Okay, I will close the public hearing, and commission members can discuss or motion.
Yeah.
All right. I'd like to make a motion to approve the site plan as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. All right. Looks good. I'm assuming they are making an improvement to an apartment that's above board.
Yes.
So that's great. Letter B, 66 East 8th Street, rear addition.
Yes, so this is New Holland Brewery. They are proposing a 2,414 square foot building addition, primarily on the upper floor, but also to the ground floor and the basement. In addition, they're adding an elevator and the shaft, which is located right here in the visual on your screen. Due to this addition, first of all, this is proposed to be at 6 foot 6 inches off the setback. The required setback here is a maximum of 6 feet. Therefore, they will require a waiver for that extra 6 inches from Planning Commission. They will also require an OPR, optional plan review, because the window, there's not going to be any window component transparency on the elevator shaft, neither from 18 inches to 10 feet, which is the pedestrian level, or on the greater facade. So an optional plan review is therefore required. Staff is in support of both of them. The OPR, because they're still being intentional about the facade and the pedestrian, especially the pedestrian facade there, decorating it to still be of interest. And then certainly the 6 inches are not, a big issue. And that 6 inches is required because of the door that is located there, which is per building code. You may have noticed that you also received a letter from Phil Meyer, the preservation planner. This building is located in the National Register Historic Downtown District, which is not locally mandated, so it does not need to go through to get a certificate of appropriateness with the Historic District Commission. However, because it's been noted, we've started looking at these buildings that are part of it to see whether or not there's any compatibility with historic development. And we have spoken with the applicant on this item. It's also been presented to the Downtown Development Authority. Their recommendation to Planning Commission was to approve it as submitted, saying that they would like for the applicant to look at some ways to integrate some of the historic element, if at all possible. And the applicant is here to answer any questions and to discuss this slightly further.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dave White, partner with New Holland Brewing. And as was mentioned, we're looking at our second phase of renovation,
Can you
which
mention your address as well? please?
66 East 8th Street.
Okay, thanks.
We're working on a second phase renovation. We just completed our interior. This is the second. Excited about the addition of an elevator, which gives us opportunity for future with our second floor. This allows us to have a contiguous bar joining to our building, as well as a kitchen addition, which we've wanted to do for quite a while. So all these elements are important for us. We have some nice renderings by Andy back here. We want to kind of blend in the building with our beer garden structure, which is pretty casual. And we're willing to work to appease blending the new and the old.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is an attempt at that. We'll integrate some of the fencing that we've done around our perimeter of the beer garden onto the lower halves of the building to help break up the height. I don't know, Andy, is there anything else you can think of that would
Yes, please state your name and address as well. But you have to stand 6 feet apart from each
Okay.
other.
All right. Go on up, and you can go to the microphone.
Yep.
Andrew Bear, architect, 222 South River Avenue. As Dave is saying, you know, we are more than happy to attempt to integrate it into the architecture of the building. It's a bit challenging. The building has been modified many, many times over the years. And, but as he mentioned, we are taking materials from the existing beer garden. You know, doesn't read quite as well as it should, but up at the top of that elevator shaft, that brown, dark brown band, the intent is to make that look and feel much like the front of the building that has the signage on it, has the trim around it, and as well as the canopy that's over that, just to the right of the plant work and the architectural, will look like the canopy that's out in front of what we call the Fairbanks Room, where the big wall is that opens up downtown.
Is that brick on the side and then accented on the balcony area too?
The addition is such that part of the brick of the building that's there is still exposed. So just to the right where the future balcony is gonna be upstairs is brick that's there now.
Okay.
And that's not historic brick.
And it's not historic brick. We put that up about 12 years ago, before any of this became part of the conversation. So there's this thing going on, and the materials are more in line with the beer garden itself, and also from a constructability standpoint and a cost function, to be honest. The masonry construction, New Holland doesn't want to close. I've worked with them for a long time. They hate closing. Masonry, we don't want to start till October because that's when the beer garden closes for the season, and then we do all of this work, and if you're putting brick up in the wintertime, it's tough, and it isn't something that played all that well with the beer garden's aesthetic anyway, so.
The footprint of your property though would not change, correct?
The footprint, no.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Is the elevator also gonna allow for deliveries to the basement?
Yes,
Okay.
that's part of its purpose,
Desperately need that.
yeah. And the elevator is in a position where there's no other place to put it. We explored putting it inside, and that became horrible issues. And the basement is only under the original building, and it needs to serve the basement. And just to the east of that elevator shaft is all the electrical service.
And you get a lot of deliveries right
They
off.
get deliveries every morning.
Yeah.
All the beer is down below.
Mm-hmm.
And the exit door is from a fire stair.
Okay.
Can't practically move that.
Right.
Yeah, so you're retaining both that exit door and then also the window above it, so even though there's not
That's the plan.
okay,
That's where the
Well,
6-inch issue is?
Yeah.
That's where the 6-inch issue is.
okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
The downtown, of course, is a very special place for residents of Holland and many people living around this area. And so the Planning Commission has very famously turned certain projects down on the basis of setbacks, on the basis of windows. We take all of the regulations quite seriously when it comes to our downtown area. And you're requesting to be relieved of the 60% window transparency requirement. And I think what the staff is recommending is that we do approve this OPR request for 0% window coverage, but it's subject to the review of the final elevation showing aesthetic elements in lieu of the windows. Do you have any ideas right now how you would do that?
The rendering doesn't show it, but the intent is to put some of the artistic metal panels on that west wall, that surface as well, and probably make it a grow wall. So it'd be very similar to what you see on that south facade.
Okay,
Mm.
so
that's
just
the
help
intent.
break it up and.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna break it up.
Uh-huh, okay,
And it will create
think-
depth,
Yeah,
some depth there with
okay.
that texture, and then we can have something that can grow up it.
Have you explored a clear elevator shaft?
no.
No.
Okay. I have no idea what the cost of the elevator shaft is, so I was just curious.
No,
A lot of kegs of beer.
A lot of cases, yeah. you think-
it's a very practical, it's not a freight elevator, but it essentially is.
True.
And putting
Yes.
something like in a hotel lobby is not appropriate.
Right. Makes sense. Any other
Okay.
questions for the applicant?
No.
Comments? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, we will open a public hearing on this item, if anybody would like to come forward. Okay, I will close the public hearing. questions, comments, discussion from commission members?
I've got a couple of comments and then a question in regard to this. I don't have any problem with the extra 6 inches that's there based on the layout of the building, you know, to say, oh, you gotta move it 6 more inches, now suddenly we got a problem with a door and a window.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly the reason why we're here, is to allow for those kinds of things. And in regard to the glass elevator shaft, while that may provide more glass on that facade, you're looking at an elevator shaft. Even if you put a glass elevator in there, you're still looking at an elevator shaft. I think that there are probably better aesthetic things that can be done with that, even without the glass requirement that's there. One concern I have, and maybe this is a question to address to staff, is the letter that we received from Phil Meyer. What bearing does that have on our decision-making process here? What requirements do we have to follow in regard to that, if any?
Yeah, it's really a recommendation. Just as you receive a recommendation from the Downtown Development Authority, we're now providing this recommendation from the Historic Preservation Planner.
Okay. Okay. Great. Thank you. That's all I have at this point.
I'd like to build on that a little bit too. I think it's a good thing that we ask the Historic Preservation Planner to comment on architectural aspects in the downtown. I think the architecture in our downtown is one of the reasons why it's such a beautiful, beautiful place to be. It's such gorgeous architecture on many of our old buildings, and other cities neglect that, and pretty soon, over 10, 20 years, they begin to erode and get a lot of eclectic buildings that are quite ugly. They just easily replace it because it's much easier to do so than it is to preserve it. And so I'm all in favor of having comments. I know there isn't a lot of authority to what the historic preservation, but he has this perspective that will remind us, I think, of how important it is and how we should encourage people to stay within the theme. But, you know, we certainly can't demand it, but we should encourage people to take that position, I think, so.
And one more thing, I'm sorry, to add to that is that there is ordinance language right now about preserving the character of adjacent buildings. However, specifically that does speak about on frontages. So there's that
Yeah,
element
that's
to it
true,
as
yeah.
well.
Okay.
I just had a comment in, you know, this time of such uncertainty, to see a restaurant expanding right now, or a brewery, is just amazing. I mean, think about the challenges that industry has faced, and to see New Holland pivot to provide hand sanitizer and the other things they've done, but the fact that they're willing to move forward so quickly with this expansion, still having 50% limitations. I mean, this is really amazing that they're willing to do this
Yeah,
right now.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to move that we approve the waiver request for a 6.5-foot setback, subject to the conditions of approval.
I'd support that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Then I move that we approve the OPR request for 0% window coverage, subject to review of the final elevations showing aesthetic element in the lieu of windows.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And finally, I move that we approve the site plan for the rear and side street additions for 66 East 8th Street, subject to the conditions of approval.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. All right. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming in. Yes. Jenna's going to clean a minute, sanitize the podium. All right. Letter C, 421 East 32nd Street, site plan amendment.
Yes.
Take your
One
time.
moment.
It's okay.
Oops, wrong way.
That was super tiny.
Right? Okay. Kenny Lynn is the applicant here. He's the owner of Shanghai Chinese restaurant on East 32nd, as well as the China King Buffet. This project has already been approved back in September of 2019. However, they since then have determined that they're going to need a larger stormwater detention area. And cost-wise, they determined that the proposal for having a restaurant, a banquet area, 3 retail units, and 6 residential units was cost prohibitive and was not something that they would be able to do. Therefore, he's coming back requesting approval as an amendment, and because there were several different items that are changing, we decided to do this as one large new approval rather than just specifically looking at the amendments. Having said that, a PUD agreement had already been written based on the approvals that were granted back in 2019. And this was included with your packet. So I went through it and made the changes, the necessary changes for the types of amendments that would need to be made for the actual PUD agreement, which I'm going to speak to in just one moment. So now what they're requesting is for a 17,580 square foot mixed use building instead of the 22,753 square foot. And with 3 residential units, 2 of which would be on the second floor, 1 on the first floor behind the banquet area. And then, of course, the restaurant and banquet area. Then the parking lot, the amount of spaces would decrease, per the new size of the lot. So 150 spaces with 6 barrier-free would be proposed rather than the 176 spaces that were previously approved. However, the 150 is still aligned with our requirements, our parking schedule for, say, C2 zone district, which this PUD surrounds. They're still going to be doing a 100-foot extension to the left-hand turn lane on 32nd Street to enhance the traffic flow in and out of the sites. Drive aisles will still be compliant at 25 feet wide. Landscaping, so that they are requesting now a bit of a amendment change to if you recall, there was a requirement to have the parking lot be 25 feet off of the property line in the front, as well as on Hastings. Previously it was approved at about 13 and a half feet by Planning Commission, as long as they had adequate screening, vegetative screening, which the landscape plan does show. And now they're requesting it to be at about 18 feet on both frontages. Sorry, I'm trying to get to the landscape plan to show you the adequate screening. Here we go.
Jenna, just so I'm understanding this, you said that it's required 25. They were asking for 13 and now they're asking for 18?
Correct.
Okay, and that's from what point again?
From what?
What point?
From the property line to the parking lot.
Okay.
So the 25 feet was included in the previous PUD agreement from 1997. No, I'm sorry. Actually, that was a PUD standard in our current zoning ordinance to have the 25 foot whenever you have a PUD. So that waiver had already been accepted. So real quickly, I do want to go through the PUD agreement to just mention those specific amendments that would need to be approved. That setback that I just was speaking to, the 18 feet minimum, of course, the verbiage about the plan as being approved. Number 6, if you look under plan specifications, that previously, so it's talking about the actual plan specification. However, going to sorry, there's a section here that talks to one of the land uses in the 1997 agreement. So page number 4Q stated that residential uses were only allowed on the second story or higher of a multi-story commercial building. And so that would be one of the crucial amendments that would need to be approved, so that one of the residential units could be on the ground floor behind the commercial portion. So also, just some language from Transportation Services requiring agreements for the stormwater permit would need to be changed in this PUD agreement. The city's requirement, these are all requirements from Brian White, which basically are the same, though altered in a bit in terms of language semantics. So if that could be approved as the PUD amendment being approved, or the PUD agreement being approved in addition to the site plan, that would be beneficial, unless you wanted to zoom into specific points within that. And we do have the applicant here if they would like to say anything else, or if you have any questions.
I have a question, Jenna. What was the reason for that PUD standard that residential units not be on the ground floor? Do you have any reason why that was in there?
I don't know. Again, I was back from the 1997 PUD agreement.
That just seems so peculiar. I just wonder if there's some reason for it that I don't understand what it would be.
Was that to eliminate residential from the main floor so there could be retail in the front portion?
I don't know.
Okay. Any other questions from staff? No? Does the applicant want to come forward and talk any more about the project? No? Okay. Jenna did a great job then, okay. Okay. All right. At this time, I will open a public hearing on this item. If you would like to come forward, please state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes. No?
Did you want to speak to it?
We're not too scary up here, even though these masks make us look a little weird, don't they?
My name is Thelma Hoekman, and I live at 775 Holly Creek Drive. And I was amazed to get this letter in the mail because this whole property thing had changed so much from the last time we sat here. And my question was, too, was there a reason why all the business words were taken out? Because on the first thing, there were supposed to be 4 businesses in there. And we kind of wondered, as our condominiums, why this all changed so much. And do you have an answer for us? I mean, we're happy about that because we didn't really want 4 more businesses across the street from us. And I see that the parking thing is lessened, and so there will be more green space there. And has that all been taken care of also? I mean, we're just delighted that this has toned down a little bit because we
great.
didn't really care to have all those residences there. And that has toned down to 3, and now we have no more businesses in there. And that was our big thing. So, Mr. Lynn, thank you very much. And I speak for the whole condominium complex because we were very concerned about the traffic pattern that was going to be a real issue there. So, thank you. And I'm having a difficult time hearing you, but Mr. Van Antwerp, thank you very much for bringing that up too, because we did have a big question about that. So,
Okay.
thank you all.
Yes, thank you. Any other comments on this item? No? Okay, I will close the public hearing. And Jenna, this was just a change, cost-effective change, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So purely on cost, sounds good. Any other questions, comments?
I just have one comment in regard to the PUD agreement, and Marv, I know you're listening. And I'm sure Marv knows exactly the reason why that there was residential only allowed on the second floor, and he's probably screaming at his television right now, trying to get us here. So sorry, Marvin, we can't hear you to know the answer to that question. But we can see clearly that 23 years ago, you were part of putting this thing together. So I just wanted to make sure that Marvin knew that we were thinking about him today while we were making these decisions.
Did you notice the planner also was Mark Vanderploeg?
Oh.
Ah.
No, then.
All right. Any
Well-
other questions? Fred?
No, I'm ready to make a motion.
Oh,
Yeah, do we-
okay, you're
are we
moving right into
making
it.
3 for this one?
Sorry?
Are there 3 motions
Yeah.
or? Okay.
I move that we approve the site plan amendment for 421 East 32nd Street and the 2019 PUD agreement amendment with conditions of approval.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Secondly, I move to approve the planning commission's waiver to allow for an 18-foot parking lot setback off 32nd Street and off Hastings Avenue instead of the required 25 feet.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And finally, I'll make it really bad, huh? Finally, I move to approve the 2019 and 1997 PUD agreement amendment per the specifics of this site plan approval and to allow residential uses beyond, not only above, commercial uses.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thanks
I'll
for
write
coming out.
over your letter.
Next item, letter D, 581 East 24th Street. Satellite conditional use recommendation to BOA.
All right, back to me?
That's Mark? Another Mark?
Yep.
Different
right,
Mark.
the other Mark. Yep. So this is an application from Viasat Incorporated, which is a California-based communications company. And they are making application actually to the Board of Appeals for a conditional use permit to install a 6-foot diameter satellite dish on a concrete foundation. They will be leasing a portion of the lot located immediately behind the Aldi store on East 24th Street, 581 East 24th Street. And again, yeah, review of the Planning Commission is required prior to the decision from the Board of Appeals. So the satellite dish and related equipment will be installed on a 25 by 28 foot cement slab, and it will be contained within a locked chain link fence enclosure. The site plan, by my assessment, seems to comply with the dimensional standards for height and setbacks. The one kind of point of note is that the landscaping standard would call for a buffer of plant materials as a screen. However, the Board of Appeals is permitted to waive this requirement if it determines that the visual impact in the surrounding area is minimal. And that's the conclusion that I came to. So I would, encourage this group to pass along that recommendation to the Board of Appeals that the landscaping requirements be waived. Yeah, I think that's it. My recommendation or staff's recommendation is that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the plan to the Board of Appeals, including a recommendation to waive the landscaping requirements.
So Mark, this is the space directly between the storage facility
Correct.
and Aldi and has
Yep.
its own little driveway, access driveway.
Yeah, there is a slight little drive, I think, that has right to the cement slab, right?
Questions from commission
Or
members?
around it, not directly to it.
Okay,
And there is some landscaping that was put in with the storage shed, and that will remain. And to the extent that they do any damage to, when they do the construction, they state in their plans that they will try to return it to the condition that it's currently in.
okay. And this is property owned by
I think
Aldi
it's,
or by?
no, it's
it's-
privately owned, a company out of Zealand or a developer out of Zealand, Giddy Up Incorporated or something.
Okay.
Something of that sort.
Got it.
So we're only looking at just approving this pad. I was thinking that the metal building was part of this as well, but it's not, is it?
No.
Okay.
That's existing, yeah.
Yeah.
So this has been reviewed by all the relevant departments and
It had, well,
looks like
actually,
it.
no, it didn't go for department review. Is that right, Jenna?
It goes, but as part of the conditional permit review. So they'll get back directly to Tricia rather than requiring it for planning commission. So basically, this is an addition to staff recommendation.
Okay. All
Can you,
right.
can you see this big ugly dish from anywhere? I mean, there's no residence around it, it's just
Mm-mm.
out in the
Can't-
middle of, behind Aldi's.
Mm-hmm.
You won't be able to see it from 31 unless perhaps a little bit in the winter. You can see it if you drive around the back side of Aldi,
Yeah,
but not from the Elks Lodge. To the best of my knowledge, I don't believe you'll be able to see it from their back lot.
okay.
All right.
Okay, well, anybody want to make a motion, or shall I go ahead?
Fred, you're on a roll.
Okay, all right. Well, I move that we recommend, the planning commission recommends plan approval for the property at 581 East 24th Street, that we recommend plan approval to the Board of Appeals, including the recommendation to waive the landscaping requirements.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Next item, communications and petitions, scheduling of public hearings. There aren't any, correct?
Correct.
Communications from commission members? None? Communications from staff?
Just real quickly, just a reminder for the July 28th Udo meeting. So we'll be in here from 3 to 5, unless that time doesn't work for anyone, but do you think that's good still?
I, just for the board's, or the commission's notification, I'll be out of town that day, so.
You cannot take summer vacation. Just kidding.
I'd like
We'll
to
miss it.
thank Jenna for sending those materials out to us,
Mhm.
professional planning literature and fascinating videos of street use, and it's great. Thank you very much for doing that.
Absolutely.
All right. Motion for adjournment.
So moved?
Support?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No, okay.